Expenditure of the Government of India for the year 2014-15. Madam, I rise to present the budget for the year 2014-15. The people of India have decisively voted for a change. The verdict represents the exasperation of the people with the status quo. India unhesitatingly desires to grow. Those living below the poverty line are anxious to free themselves from the curse of poverty. Those who have got an opportunity to emerge from the difficult challenges have become aspirational. They now want to be a part of the new middle class. Their next generation has a hunger to use the opportunity that society provides for them. Slow decision-making has resulted in a loss of opportunity. 2 years of sub-5% growth in the Indian economy has resulted in a challenging situation. We look forward to lower levels of inflation as compared to the days of double-digit rates of food inflation in the last 2 years. The country is in no mood to suffer unemployment, inadequate basic amenities, lack of infrastructure, and apathetic governance. The slowdown in India broadly reflects the trend in many economies. In contrast to the aftermath of the crisis of 2008-2009, when restoration of growth in advanced economies was a primary concern, the continuing slowdown being presently witnessed in many emerging economies has posed a threat to sustained global recovery. Fortunately, there are green shoots of recovery being seen in the global economy. As per the IMF, the world economy is projected to grow at 3.6% in 2014, vis-a-vis 3% in 2013, with the euro area expected to register a positive growth after a contraction witnessed in 2012 and 13. However, the performance of the US economy with the attendant implications for an unconventional monetary policy stance and global financial conditions is pivotal to the fate of the global recovery in the coming years. These are the headwinds against which the Indian economy would have to maneuver its way to attain a higher growth trajectory. As Finance Minister, I am bound to usher in a policy regime that will result in a desired macroeconomic outcome of higher growth, lower inflation, sustained level of external balance, and prudent policy stance. The budget is the most comprehensive action plan in this regard. In the first budget of the NDA government that I am presenting before the August House, my aim is to lay down a broad policy indicator of the direction in which we wish to take the economy. The steps I will announce in this budget are only the beginning of a journey towards a sustained growth of 7 to 8% or above within the next 3-4 years, with the macroeconomic stabilization, which includes lower levels of inflation, less fiscal deficit, and manageable current account deficit. Therefore, it would not be wise to expect anything that can be done or must be done in the first budget presented within 45 days of the formation of the government. While higher growth is a sine qua non, we cannot be oblivious of the fact that there is a large population of this country which is below the poverty line. It is the poor who suffer the most. We have to ensure that our anti-poverty programs are well targeted. The growing aspiration of the people will be reflected in the development strategy followed by the government led by the Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi and the mandate of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. Allow me to assure this Honorable House that we have taken up this challenge in the right earnest. We shall leave no stone unturned in creating a vibrant and strong India. The prevailing economic situation presents a great challenge. It calls for a conscious choice to be made by all of us. Should we allow this drift to carry on and watch helplessly? Should we allow our future to suffer because of our indecisiveness? Should we be victims of mere populism or wasteful expenditure? To me, the response and the remedy are both clear. The task before me today is very challenging because we need to revive growth, particularly in the manufacturing sector and infrastructure, to raise adequate resources for our developmental needs. On the one hand, the task is simple if we accept the principle that we cannot spend beyond our means. We need to introduce fiscal prudence that will lead to fiscal consolidation and discipline. Fiscal prudence to me is of paramount importance because of considerations of intergenerational equity. We cannot leave behind a legacy of debt for our future generations. We cannot go on spending today, which would be financed by taxation on a future date. There is an urgent need to generate more resources to fuel the economy. For this, the tax GDP ratio must be improved and the non-tax revenues increased. We must remember that the decline of fiscal deficit from 5.7% of the GDP in 2011-12 to 4.8% in 2012-13 and 4.5% in 2013-14 was mainly achieved by a reduction in expenditure rather than by way of realization of higher revenues. Although the external sector witnessed a turnaround with the year ending with a current account deficit of 1.7% of the GDP against 4.7% in 2012-13, this was mainly achieved through restriction of non-essential imports and slowdown in the overall aggregate demand. Going forward, we must continue to be watchful of the CAD. My predecessor had set up a very difficult task of reducing the fiscal deficit to 4.1% of the GDP in the current year. Considering that we have 2 years of low GDP growth and almost static industrial growth, a moderate increase in indirect taxes, a large subsidy burden, and not so encouraging tax buoyancy, the target of 4.1% fiscal deficit is indeed daunting. Difficult as it may appear, I have decided to accept this target as a challenge. One fails only when one stops trying. My roadmap for fiscal consolidation is a fiscal deficit of 3.6% for 2015-16 and 3% for 2016-17. I am conscious of the fact that the Iraq crisis is leaving behind an impact on oil prices and the situation in the Middle East continues to be volatile. Monsoon this year appears to be more unpredictable, while inflation has remained at elevated levels relative to what it is perceived as acceptable. There is a gradual moderation in the WPI recently, from a high of 7.35% in 2012-13 to 5.98 in 2013-14. But we are still not out of the woods. We must address fully the problem of black money, which is a curse on our economy. Faced with these adversities, we have no option but to undertake some bold steps in order to enhance economic activity, to spur growth in the economy. These steps are only the beginning of our effort to revive the growth spirit of the Indian economy. They are directional. Expenditure Management Commission. My government is committed to the principle of minimum government, maximum governance. To achieve this goal, time has come to revive the allocative and operational efficiencies of government expenditure to achieve the maximum output. The government will constitute an Expenditure Management Commission which will look into various aspects of expenditure reform to be undertaken by the government. The commission will give its interim report within this financial year. I also propose to overhaul the subsidy regime, including food and petroleum subsidies, and make it more targeted and provide full protection to the marginalized, poor, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes. A new urea policy would be formulated. The debate on whether to introduce the goods and services tax must now come to an end. We have discussed the issue for the past many years. Some states have been apprehensive about surrendering their taxation jurisdiction. Others want to be adequately compensated. I have discussed the matter with the states both individually and collectively. I do hope we are able to bring a final solution in this course of this year and approve the legislative scheme which enables the introduction of the GST. This will streamline tax administration, avoid harassment of business, and result in higher tax collection both for the center and the states. I assure all states that government will be more than fair in dealing with them. Tax administration. The sovereign right of the government to undertake retrospective legislation is unquestionable. However, this power has to be exercised with extreme caution and judiciousness, keeping in mind the impact of each such measure on the economy and the overall investment climate. This government will not ordinarily bring any change retrospectively, which creates a fresh liability.